golden rule of business was to look after your most important customers before someone else does.
What's more of a day-to-day, week-to-week type of thing that they could be doing to focus more on their existing customers and not take them for granted?
The trap that we can fall into is to become just reactive rather than being intentionally and creatively proactive.
How do I really put myself now into this person's world and understand their dynamics, what really matters for them?
Businesses that will win in today's world are the ones that act and behave with intent.
So, self-proclaimed coffee snob.
Yeah, that's a statement. And shall I put that on my LinkedIn
Okay,
profile?
so you could. That could be one of those straplines at the top.
Yeah.
So I made the brave step of offering you coffee,
Yes.
which I made myself from our coffee machine.
With love.
I did. There was love put into that coffee.
There was definite. This sounds awful. There was definite love in the coffee.
There was.
There was.
Yeah. It's our very favourite bean to cup machine in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
The Dura whatever it is, model number.
The 7000 Mark II.
That one, yes.
Yeah,
that one, yeah. They've upgraded it. With the finest Lavazza coffee beans.
I didn't know they were Lavazza.
Out of 10 then, compared to the whatever it is you pay for your fancy pants coffee in the shop.
Well, don't forget, I live down south, so we've got South tax attached.
So everything's inflated.
Everything's inflated.
A southern pound is worth more than a...
So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10.
Okay, I think that's not bad.
I might be being kind.
Okay, 5 then.
So what would make it a higher score? There was a slight bitterness. Mm-hmm. This is a strange conversation.
Over roasted coffee? Too much water?
Not too much
Wrong
water. Milk? The milk, so I like a cappuccino.
Right.
So therefore the sort of steam milk, the frothiness of the milk.
Need a steamer. We haven't got steam. We've got
and this is it. So it was, nice warming milk added on top. Do you know what? I'm a coffee snob, but I don't really know why. I just like what I like.
And yet you sink a reasonable amount of money into your local coffee shop without having shares in it.
True. Maybe I should get shares in my
now I think we're
coffee
onto
shop.
Something.
COVID. Most people got vaccinated. I got a coffee addiction.
You have a lot of passion for your coffee, right? You could have that as a little sideline. Maybe weekends you could have one of those little Volkswagen, vans that goes around. You open the back
Dave,
and there's coffee machine.
I don't need another side hustle. The main hustle is the main hustle. The side hustle.
I didn't know you had side hustles at all.
Everyone's got a side hustle these days. It's 2025. Where have you been? Have you not got a TikTok channel?
We've got a TikTok
you need
channel,
a TikTok
or an Airbnb,
channel. Well, this is it. This is where you're going wrong.
On Etsy.
You need to 10x someone's income with one click and a $99 subscription.
Oh yeah, I've seen the people who do that.
That's what life's all about. I haven't got that.
Okay.
I mean, I wish I did.
I'm going to leave that piece of advice hanging and instead distract you and say, let's do a podcast instead.
That's why we're here.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow, where every week we try and help owners and managers of small and medium-sized enterprises with something that's maybe useful, interesting, or just a bit wacky to prompt your thoughts and get you discussing different stuff within your own businesses, hopefully help you grow. Now, unusually, I don't have Richard with me this week. He's off outside, actually, nursing a sore ankle, but he'll tell you all about that next week. Instead, I've got a guest in the studio. David, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
David Ventura has been brave enough to come along and join me on a podcast. Thanks for doing that. I think you're a bit of a veteran as well. You've done a couple of podcasts.
I love a podcast.
I didn't realise I was bringing in podcast royalty.
Well, this is it. People always say you've got a face for radio.
And I've heard that once.
And unfortunately, podcasts these days are not just audio, are they? I find myself having to, think about whether I've shaved on a day that I appear on a podcast. So hopefully your lens has enough of a filter on it.
It's a 4K, and we'll be zooming in on the stubble to make sure.
Ready for the HD. Excellent.
So here we are on episode 124. And normally at this point we do a quick rundown of what the previous 3 were, just because we don't expect everyone to listen to all of them, amazing and shocking though that may sound.
Yeah.
Sometimes people skip 1 or 2. So we just like to tell them what they missed, really, so they may go back. And also there's a whole world of people out there that just find us on YouTube and they maybe watch 30 seconds of it. So this is our little advert for us and what we do. So the last 3, though, were all on the same subject, so I'm going to group them together. We had part 1, part 2 and part 3 of the Just One Thing series, where we asked a load of business contacts, clients and friends to name just one thing as a piece of advice they would give. So they were all compiled and put into episodes 121, 122, and 123. Before that, 120, you'd like this one, listen to your customers.
Yeah.
And especially if your market is in danger of moving on and you miss it, you carry on doing the same old, and you don't realize that that's not necessarily what the customer's asking for. And the one before that was an AI-themed one, and it was about how to navigate this explosion of AI-driven expertise on the grounds that there's an ever-increasing amount of stuff out there now, and it's ever cheaper to access it. So if you're an expert and you rely on making money out of selling expertise, whether that's in a legal sense, an accounting sense, a business, medical, whatever, that's going to become a real challenge for you.
Yeah.
So that was quite an interesting one.
Is there something though, so just diving into that straight away.
I can't resist that one.
Well, I can't, because that's certainly a challenge that we have. You know, I would say, well, listen, if you'd have asked me 6 months ago, before the noisy AI dial was switched up, I might have said that our business was all about expertise. That was our product. I think if you ask me now, I'd say our business is part expertise, because actually what I'm realizing is that it's not just the knowledge and the experience and the expertise that's there, it's the way it's delivered and that human to human connection in how we kind of unpack it. That's really where the value lies.
Yeah, I think it's taken the top off the iceberg.
Yeah.
So if you imagine, this is something we used in our recruitment stuff before. If you imagine there's this sort of 4-layered pyramid, a bit like a Maslow sort of thing.
Love a pyramid.
Love a pyramid.
You're talking to a consultant.
Bit of hierarchy.
If it's not a
2x2 grid.
Yeah, 2x2.
We'll go for a pyramid.
Or a Venn diagram.
Yeah, they're good.
Venn diagram's a bit.
You can get them with even 5 circles overlapping.
Love it.
They're great. So imagine if the base layer of our foundation layer of our pyramid is worldview. Very hard to change anybody's worldview. It's formed very early on in life. It's peer group, it's religion, it's families, that sort of thing. Next layer up is behaviors.
Yep.
Can be changed, but take decades, and they're ingrained, especially the older you get. Old dogs, new tricks type thing. Then we get into the second level down. Third one up is skills, and the top is our knowledge. And we used to say to people in recruitment, don't recruit people based on their knowledge, because that's the quickest thing to pick up. Even skills, you could teach skills over a reasonably short time frame. So what has AI done? Well, it's made that knowledge bit at the top accessible to all.
Yeah.
So if all people used to come to you for was effectively a glorified way of looking something up, then you're goosed.
Yeah.
There's no value in that anymore.
So going on to the recruitment train here, I always talk about knowledge being one of 4 parts, a little similar to what you just mentioned there. The others being attitude, skills, and habits. And I think where AI can really support actually is on the habitual side of things. Yeah. Because habits take time to form. Forming habits requires a process. If a process is systemized, automated, driven for you, done for you in some cases, then that habit's going to be much easier to form. So I think articulating or finding out what are the habits that feed the most successful people in your business in whatever department or role, that's where AI can be a game changer. Yeah. The knowledge, yes, and so the noisiness, I think, of AI at the moment, if knowledge is part of your offering, then you have to become comfortable is a harsh word here, but you have to become accepting that that knowledge, once spoken out loud or in public, is now available to absolutely everyone that wants it. Yeah.
But then I guess the internet started doing that, and it became just too big, and now we've got access to this big thing.
Yeah, and all AI has done is aggregate it better than Google ever did.
Yeah, sure. And Google did it better than whatever it was before with just hyperlinks on directory pages. Or whatever. Can you imagine a world before Google?
A world
did exist.
Can you imagine a world after Google? Do you think it will go?
After Google's gone?
Yeah.
Well, arguably, unless it carries on.
I mean, is Google the blockbuster of today? Like, are they seeing...
Well, they've at least not done... We talked about Blockbuster last week.
Did you?
At least they've not done what Blockbuster did and turn their back to progress. And they have got Gemini and Bard and their own things. Yeah. So they're playing the game. They're moving with it. And maybe search. Maybe it's life after search, not life after Google.
What happens if Geppetto retires? Geppetto, I call ChatGPT Geppetto. I think it should have a name.
I think it should have a name.
Yeah, Geppetto. I can't take full credit for that, actually. If Matt will know who Matt is.
Okay, Matt. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
I'm going to stick with Geppetto. I'll let that.
Yeah, Geppetto. But what if Geppetto retires?
Yeah.
Because there's so much.
Does a bot retire?
I don't know.
Are they putting him into a pension?
So this might be an urban myth, but didn't one of the latest versions of ChatGPT start lying in order to stop itself from being usurped?
I think there was
by the next
I
model?
heard a story, yeah.
Right.
Anyway, we've just done a bit of a bonus episode for episode 119 there. I should cut that bit out and bung it into episode 119. What we did want to talk about today was something completely different.
Yeah.
which is a very customer-centric view of the world. That's where you come from. That's what you do. That's your specialism. So I'll briefly introduce you and you can tell me where I've got this wrong. But your passion is around the stage in the whole life cycle that we talk about in all these podcasts that happens after you've won a deal. It's when a person becomes a customer. And the fact that your view in life is that a lot of businesses tend to maybe not look after that bit as much as they should. Enter David Ventura.
Well, yeah, and that's a great opening door, I guess. I was taught very early on in my business career, and I think I've had 2 careers in my life. One of them being business, and the previous world being loosely termed show business. But the connections and the sort of transferable themes and skills became very apparent to me later. The one thing I was taught very early on in business, that the golden rule of business was to look after your most important customers before someone else does. And I think in today's world, someone else probably doesn't quite cut it because something else could just be doing nothing or, going in a different direction.
The substitute, whatever it may be.
Yeah, your biggest competitor is often do nothing. The reality, though, of course, is that if you leave customers be to their own devices, they'll come up with their own paths forward, and those paths may not include you.
You may not be there.
So you talk about customer-centric, and our world is rooted in customer centricity.
So what went wrong? Because you think that was such an obvious truism that if you've worked hard to get a customer, you want to keep them, and yet tantamount to that's not right. Patently is what I was trying to say there.
I'm okay. We pick a word, any word. Make up words.
We'll put a gobbledygook word in there.
Yeah.
It seems obvious, evidentially.
Yes.
That's not very common in terms of people's way of behaving. They may think that, they may say that if you challenge them, but they don't look after their customers.
Evidentially and experientially, common sense is not so common, and the things that aren't obvious are never really that obvious. So there are fundamental truths in business, and in fact in any walk of life, that we all know, and yet we don't do or live by, and that's just a way of life, right? We all know that we should go to the gym every day, yet there's a plethora of reasons that most of us choose not to. And, the same in business. We all know that we should look after customers, and there are a plethora of reasons and priorities that lean us slightly further in the other direction. And that's not to say that the direction we're going in is to not look after our customers. So I don't think in most businesses are actively choosing to treat their customers badly. They're just prioritizing and focusing perhaps on winning new logos, winning new business, getting new deals over the line, because that's where the targets are set. That's where the dopamine hit comes in.
I was going to ask you about the dopamine hit, because I think salespeople, there are 2 types of salespeople in my world, but you've got so much more refinement and knowledge. If I was to just try and break it down to those that love talking to customers, key account management, order taking, and those that love the dopamine hit of winning the new logo, throw it over the wall and move on to the next one. So, and there's a world in between, I know, but go on, give us your view on that.
Well, I would say that the first that you labelled there, those that like talking to customers and taking orders, are not actually salespeople.
They're in the sales team?
Bold. Often, yeah. I mean, hierarchically and team-wise and organisationally, we've got to put them somewhere. I don't know what I would call them. I would just say that salespeople are proactively and intentionally growing a relationship, a client, an account, call it what you will. They're proactively looking for the opportunities and not just sitting and waiting for them to come in. My experience is that a lot of people start their sales careers as salespeople, let's use an old-fashioned word, as a hunter, going out there and searching for, exploring for, and then finding.
You think that's a common entry route?
It's a common entry route because it's
That's harder though, right?
Absolutely.
Why would you go from that, and arguably the better rewarded part, and retire into
I'm not going to claim to have the single right answer to this. I'm going to give you an answer based on my experience, and therefore it's opinion based, right? My opinion is that the vast majority of people who come in at ground level in sales as hunters are doing so because that's an easier job to apply for without experience, without demonstrable, evidential, experiential, articulated, all of that stuff. They haven't got that on a piece of paper yet, and therefore a low base salary and a high commission plan to give it a go, and then we'll find out if you're any good or not. Once the dopamine's an incredible propellant in sales, right? So, and we also know, and it's fair to say, that some sales has a decent amount of luck in it, particularly if you've got a really great product and you're just right place, right time, low-hanging fruit, and, right? that dopamine hit that you get from your early sales fires you up to be good at sales for a time. And then you'll have the dip. I remember the first sales job that I had, they called it a leader's dip. Like you become a leader in the sense that you're hitting your targets consistently. You might be given people to mentor and coach, and therefore you're leading others, not literally hierarchically, but you're certainly someone that's creating a bit of a gang. And the leader's dip is when you stop hitting your numbers, the mindset shifts, the mindset change is, and you don't get the dopamine, which stops in the cycle. By that point, if you've been in the business long enough and you've made enough friends in the business, we don't want to get rid of you because we like you. So what do? Well, you've got some good accounts. Why don't you just go and look after those good accounts, see if you can find. So my experience tells me, and I'm going to get shot for this because you're going to have account managers and account directors and clients.
Phones are already ringing.
Yeah. All right,
the
exactly.
red lights are going on the call
so,
dashboard.
And this is why I say this is opinion based on experience and not fact. And there are going to be some exceptions, a lot of exceptions, like a plethora of exceptions to the rule. And that's not to say that every account
qualified,
manager,
but
it's not going to say that every account manager is a lazy salesperson.
I wasn't going to go that far.
But it's to say that there is a risk that, and I say we because I have this as well. Like I've got great clients that I've worked with a long time, and the risk is we become, lazy is a strong word. It's lazy in the sense that comfortable, yeah. It's leaving it to chance. It's leaving it to the customer to decide where to go next.
But what you described there, if I may, is that you start out hunting.
Yeah.
You get your own huntees, build your own zoo of hunted things, and then you're allowed to then farm them. Right, that's the way you go to hunting to farming, the old metaphor.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because you've spent the effort building these relationships to start with. So then you get the prize of being allowed to look after them. If that were the case, then this premise that you're set up to fix, which is to solve the sort of neglect that some customers end up experiencing once they're taken for granted, that sort of post, I know you don't know that we're closed, but they become a customer. They are now a customer.
Allergic reaction. Yeah.
They're a repeat customer, let's even say. And so therefore someone else's job is just to look after them. So why don't they get the red carpet treatment? Why aren't they loved up? What's the equivalent of the next phase then? What's the dopamine fades from the salesperson, they become a key account manager? So why do they stop being good?
So it's like what you said, just to look after them. That's the challenge. I think language matters because it feeds the mindset. And if the mindset is once you've hunted, you've got your set of customers that you got, they're yours. Well done. They're your friends now. You've built that good relationship. Now you can farm them. If you're just looking after them, then you're not being intentional enough. You're not staying close enough to them that, put this in friend context. How many friends have you got that you genuinely know week on week how they are, what's going on in their life, what their challenges are, and whether they are going to parties without you, whether they're meeting up with another friend right? Yeah. No, come on. Right. But do you see the point though? It's like, well, if you're just looking after them, then that's reactive. To look after someone reactively, that's customer service. Right. Like I have this split, this separation between service and experience, and customer service sits underneath the more holistic term of customer experience, because an experience is something that should be intentionally and creatively curated from start to finish and beyond, like as in no finish line.
Yeah, and service implies something reactive. Right?
Exactly. So you got the reactive and proactive. So to just look after them, the trap that we can fall into is to become just reactive rather than being intentionally and creatively proactive. So I think your question was, well, why
do you fall into that trap?
Yeah, because it's comfortable.
But you have got customers then who have experienced your value and have kept coming back. If you provide a service to them which they need for their business, they found a good supplier that they're prepared to trust. Unless something goes wrong, they're not necessarily minded to go and find someone else.
Sure.
So in that role where you've got existing customers that just habitually do come back.
There it is. Habitually. Habit's a wonderful set of handcuffs, isn't it? Like, how many customers come back to buy from somewhere habitually because that's what they've always done, even though they might resent it at times. They might complain about it.
You wouldn't
know.
And there could be a competitor chapping at the door Which for a while the customer would say, that's fine, thanks, I've got a supplier already for that. But then after a while, this other competitor comes up with something a little bit new, a little bit more just making them feel a bit special. And that's the risk.
So one of my biggest mantras in customer relationship management is to always create a space where stuff that needs to get said actually gets said. If you don't create that space, then you're not hearing what's either being said in their head or being said to your competitors when you're not around.
So how do you do that?
So simple. I'm going to give you a really simple and obvious answer here, and you're going to go, yeah, duh. Ask them.
Oh, yeah, duh.
Right, exactly. But let's be real. How many times do people in business genuinely ask the question, how are we getting on? And then wait and listen for the answer? My experience tells me not enough. Now, listeners and viewers of this podcast are going to be saying, well, we do that all the time. My question back to them.
Well, not many people do. I'm not sure if they would say that.
Okay, well, some will. Some will say we do it all the time. My question back to them, when do you do it? Well, on every call.
And we're not talking about a Net Promoter Score survey here.
We're not talking about Net Promoter Score because that's a statistical bit of data which tells you something and not everything.
Well, and people need to get it off their desk. They'll just lie anyway to give you a good
Exactly. But a lot of people will say, well, we ask on every call, every customer call that we have, we say, how are we getting on? And that's great.
That's no better than the waiter saying, is the food okay? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a time for me to bemoan because it's not quiet. I want to enjoy my meal.
Dave, if you don't mind me saying, the two of us are sat here rather follically challenged. And yet, on the days that we have visited a barber, it's that moment where they show you the back of your head and say, is everything all right? And just to get that awkward moment off the table, you go, it's that fine, thanks. It's that. Exactly. Right? So asking them on a call, I'm not saying people shouldn't say, how are we getting on a customer call? I'm saying that on its own is not enough. One of the things that we absolutely advocate with our clients is that on a periodic basis, if your customers are that important to you, which all customers are, and within those all customers, there's always going to be a proportion of customers that are more important than others. And that's a whole debate and conversation in a business to figure out which are important and why. But with those customers, how often, perhaps annually, perhaps every 6 months, perhaps biannually, how often do you sit down with them with the sole intent meaning nothing else in the meeting, how are we getting on?
Now, what do you think about those companies that have engaged outsiders, and we've done this on behalf of clients before, to do that for them? Customer Advisory Board, we sexily call it. And we've been given a list of names, meetings have been set up, and we have a half-hour chat with customers on our client's behalf. We're independent, and we get some pretty good truths. We then package it up and play it back. Is that cowardice, or is that actually quite effective?
No, it's very effective and very clever. And yet there are pros and cons, and it's got to be tactical. So this is a whole podcast episode in and of itself, and we could go into that as a chat on another day and see if it's worthy content. The thing that I would say is that if you're going to create a space where the stuff that needs to get said actually gets said, then you've got to think about the environment, the person, the framing, and everything around it that actually gives your customer full permission to speak on whatever that they need to speak on. So using a neutral third party, a customer advisory board or whatever, to come in and have those conversations means that your customers who you're working with, perhaps on live projects, like you're working with them, you have a relationship with them. Any discontent that they've got may remain silent because we're all human beings, and human beings often, not all, don't like to upset other human beings, and therefore wouldn't necessarily want to call them out on the things that they're not doing so well. So there is an element of a third party may just uncover or peel back enough layers that they'll get what they need to get.
Degree of honesty.
There's an extra thing though. I think a customer, an external person or people achieve more than gets achieved with the person who's day to day, and that's consistency in the structure of the conversations, so that, and I know you're a data man, so that the data you get from the feedback can be aggregated and you can find the trends. If it's just a couple of questions here and there, then actually you don't have the consistency of structure.
Well, and I think you're right. Other than just, if you just started that chat saying, I'm here to find out what's going on, I'm not going to say anything else, I'm all ears, tell me what you think. People are still likely to bias towards the positive stuff, play down anything negative.
Well, okay, let me set you a challenge then. Because so I'm an idealist and a realist in equal measure. Ideal world, absolutely, you have that external consultancy come in and do this heavy lifting for you. They're that important as a set of customers that we want to find out what they really think, right? So in an ideal world, you'd absolutely do that. In the real world, most organizations will say the account manager or the relationship manager, they need to do it because they're day to day and that's their diary. Middle ground, maybe you swap between account managers, maybe a leader or a manager, someone else. Right? But let's imagine now that you are, on behalf of a customer, turning up to meet one of their clients, and there's a new law Go with me on this. Mm-hmm. The law is you're only allowed to legally ask 3 questions. They've got to be your best 3 questions because you've got to get everything from them. What are your best 3 questions?
You're asking me now what they are?
Yeah, come on the spot.
If you could choose another supplier now instead of this one, why would you choose them?
Okay, nice. Great question. Second.
How close have you come to that decision already?
Ooh, nice. Third.
What could your current supplier do to stop that never happening again?
Nice. So you're well versed in the art of questioning. Those are the thinkers, right? Those are the good questions that really get someone sat back in their chair. I'm going to hit the simplify button now. If this were the cube, all right, we're gonna. Is that a thing anymore?
I don't know.
Are we allowed to talk about that?
Is that a commercial
the host may change. So hit the simplify button now.
Yep.
Really, the scorekeeper. And I'll call it that, the scorekeeper of any relationship, whether it be customer, whether it be friend, partner, husband, wife, the scorekeeper of any relationship is simply expectations. So your 3 questions are: where are we currently meeting your expectations? Where are we currently exceeding your expectations? Fingers crossed. And where are we falling short of your expectations? Everything else flows from those 3. Now, of course, you then get the chance to show your questioning prowess and ask better questions and, bigger questions.
Yeah, maybe they're rooted in those. Yeah. Okay, let me move the discussion on to the next phase then. Let's say that somebody listening in this role of looking after existing customers, which is a very important role and not a just at all.
Not a just.
Very important.
I was going to pick you up on a few words you've said today, like just and try and help and hopefully.
Okay.
But
I was hoping they'd get you going.
But another episode, another day. Yeah.
So somebody has done the equivalent of either the customer advisory board externally or internally, and they've made that space to get proper, frank feedback based on expectations. Where we're meeting, where we're exceeding, where we're not. That's not an everyday part of their job. That's a periodic thing, maybe every 6 months, a year, whatever it is. What advice would you give them in between time? What's more of a day-to-day, week-to-week type of thing that they could be doing to focus more on their existing customers and not take them for granted?
So the biggest question, if we're sticking with questions, as we've just talked about, that you should be asking on a daily and weekly basis is simply what's going on for you right now in your world. And you'd frame it in whatever way was comfortable, and even as I've said it there, it's a little bit clunky, and it's not the best way to frame a question. But essentially, your job as a relationship manager is to do one thing and one thing only, and that's become an expert in the customer's world. The more you know about them, the more curious you can be about your customers, the more knowledge and expertise you can capture from your conversations in a creative way that then bring you back to your boardroom table with their feedback. Like I always talk about sitting around a boardroom table and thinking of things from the inside out. Like as in, if you're just thinking about your business growth from your perspective, then you're missing the most important voice in your entire network, and that's the customers. And most businesses will say, but we know what do you know what your customers really want? How often are you actually talking to them about what's going on in their world? How often are we're having a podcast conversation about big topics. I'm not suggesting you have a podcast conversation with your customers every week, but what is the version of that does sit within your conversational style? What is the sort of conversation that someone else wouldn't just engage with, want to engage with, the sort of conversation that somebody else would enjoy? If they saw their calendar this week and they see catch up with Dave Parry, does that
highlight
fill them
their week?
Right? Is it, or does it fill them with dread? And that's the point, right? A catch up with somebody in your customer business network should be something that enthuses you, excites you, inspires you, and these are really strong words. And I'm not suggesting we all suddenly become inspirational speakers.
But not everybody's good at that, are they?
Oh, that's a good point. Just give me some more evidential experience on that. Not everyone's good at that.
Even amongst people we all know, some are better at asking how you're getting on and really meaning the question, as opposed to some that will ask it because they've been told to or feel they should, and others that don't ask it at all.
So isn't that the answer as why not everyone's good at that? It's not that they're not good at that. It's that they've been positioned and framed to think that they should and have to, and end up having those conversations in a way that's somehow perhaps a little false. Well,
that means you can't really train it then, because all you'd be doing is telling people to do something that they're not naturally leaning towards doing.
Well, telling someone to do something is not training them, though. telling someone to do something.
So
is
do you
directing
challenge the
them and
premise that
mandating
there
them.
are people in organizations whose responsibility is predominantly focused on existing customers rather than new logos, who are more comfortable taking orders, solving technical queries and updating their order book or whatever it is, rather than spending a bit of time on the phone, really understanding what's going on in your world, what the politics like. I heard about some redundancies over there. Are you at risk? What about this new tech that's come in? What do you think about this new blah, blah, blah. Some people are really just very good at being inquisitive, caring, interested, and good at asking questions. And some people aren't.
So what is the personality trait, if you like, or the behavioral trait, the attitude that leads to that inquisition and that skill and that finesse in questions, you think?
I'm not sure I've got the psychological answer to that, but certainly someone who's interested. It's a personable person.
Yeah,
someone who's
I'm not sure if I've got a psychological answer. The only thing that keeps coming to my head is that curiosity never killed any cats, but it did make really, really good salespeople. So curiosity is something that is innate within everyone. What happens, in my experience, is that as you grow up, the curiosity is battered out of you by structure and format and quote-unquote professionalism. This is what you should say.
Do you recruit for curiosity when you help with recruiting salespeople?
I would.
Do you see companies doing that?
Not as much as they should. I mean, we don't get particularly heavily involved in the recruitment process. If I do, and when we do...
If you could design one.
Oh, yeah.
If David Ventura invented a recruitment process for salespeople, it would have a big dollop of curiosity.
This feels
testing.
like another side hustle. Yeah, an experience that tests for and assesses for curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, how curious is the salesperson that sat in front of me, and is that going to lead them to not just ask the questions that they've got written on their sheet, but genuinely ask the follow-up questions which ignite an inquisition that's insightful. Because insight-led questioning is, I think, really, really important. Like, it's not just, nothing should ever feel like the Spanish Inquisition, should it? You've got to go for insight-led questioning which provokes and encourages a conversational depth which a questionnaire is not going to provide. So we were talking about this because your suggestion, assumption, or otherwise was that this is something that people are either good at or not. I genuinely hold the belief that anyone can be great at anything, given enough time and development. That doesn't mean that we've got the capacity, the time, the resource, the money to develop everyone in everything. So that's why you
and not every
shortcut
person is a round peg ready to go into every round hole, right?
Exactly.
We've all got strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. But even a square peg can be rounded.
Could be rounded, but maybe there's a square hole that'd be better suited.
Correct. So, and that's the prioritization of capacity and resource planning and deciding where not to invest your energy and money, right? But the point is, I do genuinely believe that everyone can be rounded. Everyone can be developed, whether or not you choose to. There's lots of decisions around that. Is someone, they're either good or they're not at asking questions. Possibly today, tomorrow, just start feeding curious-based growth into any sales team, and you'll get more curious conversations. If they're insight-led, they'll be intelligent and conversations that go beneath the depth of just surface level, and that means you'll get customers genuinely looking forward to, because they get personal value out of any conversations with your team. So the how to not just look after your customers is to create a dynamic that people want to remain in. And I'm sure your friends are well chosen and you like them a lot. You will.
I'm not going to admit on air.
Right, sure. Yeah, some of them listen.
Some of them listen.
Yeah, exactly. My point being, though, is that over the years, I'm sure you will be able to picture in your mind the one that you hope you don't get sat next to them at dinner. You hope that they aren't at the party because...
And they're all listening to this now thinking, I hope he's not thinking of me.
Well, by the way, if you can't think of that person, it's you. That's a standard rule, right? But there is that kind of, if you cannot engage in that level of conversation, then your customers are not going to want to be at the party with you.
I had a long list of things that I was hoping we'd cover in today's podcast, and
none of them.
We've focused on maybe one or two of them, but they weren't on the list. I think the bits that I'm taking away from this is absolutely be more deliberate about understanding properly in a more formal setting what your customer really thinks around expectations. Where we're meeting, where we're exceeding, where we're not, what we can do about it. And don't just let that crop up in one of the conversations because they happen to have half an hour to their next meeting and they're freewheeling a bit. Make it a deliberate thing. And the other one is in between times, and anyway, in all your interactions, be thinking about how do I really put myself now into this person's world and understand their dynamics, what really matters for them, and show that you really are interested, and it's curiosity, and it's heartfelt. If they've got problems that you can help solve, you're interested in doing it, if you can work around them and so on.
Heartfelt's a strong word, of course, because that's just that we've got to be passionate about everything we're doing and everything we're selling at all times. The thing for me, you said it there, deliberate. Be deliberate. Be intentional. The businesses that will win in today's world are the ones that act and behave with intent. And if they're not acting and behaving with intent, there's a risk that they're just being reactive, and they could be great at being reactive. But growth is a proactive thing, and it's something we achieve when we're deliberate and intentional and creative and curious, and I could pick a whole bunch of other adjectives as well.
That'll make the short. Now, I didn't get a chance to properly introduce you, so I'm going to outroduce you.
I like that.
Your company is called Front and Center, and you specialize in this stuff. You unlock revenue growth by focusing on these customer relationships. That's what you do, right? Through a variety of ways of doing it, whether it be coaching, consulting, training, speaking events.
Yeah.
I think my takeaway is that you're a very passionate person. You are helpful in a lot of what you do, and it is a very deliberate stuff. You're a fantastic communicator, and you alluded very teasingly there to a point where your first career was in showbiz, and I think that comes across, right? You love the show of your work. You love that. But you can, I think, help companies out there that don't have that innate ability internally to really get their message across, partly by training them to do it, but partially doing it for them, lead by example. And that's what you seem to be able to pick that up in people and say, what you meant to say was this, produce that 5 minutes of brilliance. And they think, I need him on my team.
That's lovely. And it's lovely to hear that observation. I'll link it back to curiosity. I'm inherently curious. I can't stop that. I genuinely don't believe I have all the right answers to anything. I believe that my curiosity asks questions and says things and makes observations with our clients that find the answers that they already have. And the answer for me in any form of growth, business and revenue growth being the context here, is that personal growth is the catapult to that. And if we can work with any organizations to support them in supporting their people to be more deliberate, curious, proactive, and, then, everyone wins. And one of my core values is, we all win when we win, we being the operative word there.
That's a good one to finish. That's going to end up on one of the shorts as well.
I love that.
Thanks, David. Thank you very much for coming along. I'm going to go away now and write a list of friends down and work out who I don't want to be sitting next to at the next wedding.
And if you can't, it's you.
And if you can't, it's you. Oh, my goodness. Right, there's pressure on. Thank you, all of you, for listening once again to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow. We ask you every week, but if you've enjoyed it, please tell your mates, send them an email, just tell them when you're in the pub. And in the meantime, good luck with your business.